We're going to talk about marketing, skills, getting work, big topic for many people here. Got a lot of questions about that. We're going to talk about scope of work, what's changed, etc. We're going to talk about rates, hourly rates, flat rates, day rates. Who knew hourly rates would become a thing? And like that, we have, okay, I'm going to introduce our amazing panelists now. Kathi Haberstock, bold, creative, and versatile producer, over 20 years, been on the front lines, producing cutting-edge creative work. Kathi also has deep experience as a line producer, which I think, having come up the ranks as a PA, I always love seeing that. I think it's great grist for the mill. In addition to her experience as a freelance producer, she's led and managed teams of broadcast, print, and integrated digital producers across 4 offices for Mechanism, one of the top independent agencies in the US, building best-in-class creative productions, overseeing all teams' business affairs, including instituting best practices in talent and traffic divisions, fostering innovative solutions to all creative assignments and challenges. Currently head of production operations at Eric and Kalman. Lis Graves grew up in New York City. Love that. 5 years at JWT Chicago, where we first met. She taught me how to drink a martini, what a martini was. Been freelance for many years. Awards include the prestigious D&AD, multiple Clios, 2012 Grand Prix Award at Cannes. That was for Chipotle, I bet. Among top-tier agencies who have sought her services are Mother New York, McGarry Bowen, CAA, BBH, Crispin, on, GSDM, McCann. Clients like Coke, Levi's, Verizon, Chipotle, Target, Revlon, Fox, on and on. She works with blue chip corporations and promising startups alike, with projects ranging from 10,000 to multi-million-dollar campaigns. Lisa Kalb Schaffer, weirdly, has the same last name as me. She was had an honors internship at the American Film Institute at JFK Center for the Performing Arts. That was a very cool experience. You can ask her about that sometime, but not today. Back in the day, co-founder of the now sadly defunct Freelance Producers Network. There was an organization that Lisa founded and led. So we have that gene in common, I guess. We're bringing people together. Staff stints at Gray, DDB, Publicis, did a lot of beauty work there, flew the Concorde, worked with, the finest supermodels in the land. She could tell you about when Tom Cruise's wife was crying all night long on one of her first jobs. Freelance at Deutsch, TBWA, Gotham, many others. Created digital production seminars with the School of Visual Arts, taught TV commercial production classes at the New School, NYU, and her beloved alma mater, Montclair High School in Montclair, New Jersey. Okay, let's get started. Kathi, start with you. The difference between agency staff and agency freelance producing, and could you speak to that in a kind of general way? Are there differences?
Yeah, there are differences. I mean, hello everybody, and thanks for joining, and thanks for listening to us ramble on. I hope we can get to answer all, if not some, of your questions. So thank you with the WheresSpot team, and obviously my really incredible sort of cohorts here, Lis and Lisa. Thanks for joining. So simply put, when you're staff, you're obviously there every day, right? Which is different than when you're not there every day. So I think the biggest differences between staff and freelance is that you have probably a better shot at creating a bit of a friendship, collegiate environment with your staff teams when you're on staff. And I think that speaks to some of the questions that I saw come through. It's easier over the long term to create those relationships and feel like you're part of a group than when you're freelance. You're maybe not quite as integrated into the team unless you are sort of a permalancer and you're there all the time, and that's who you are. I mean, I think that's sort of the big difference outside of all the obvious ones, which are you probably get paid less when you're on staff, just sort of dollar for dollar, than when you are getting in your hours or your day rates as a freelancer. However, freelancers may or may not make those ends meet. You know, maybe there's gaps in the year where they're not working. So, I mean, I think those are maybe the biggest differences, you know, here, you know.
Yeah. Liz, I'm going to ask you, differences, how freelance producing has changed over the last 5 years or so. You know, what comes to mind?
Yeah. I think there's a couple things. I mean, one of the biggest differences, by the way, hello, everybody. I took a quick look
Thank
at
you.
the roster and I see some great faces of colleagues over the years. And it's always tough doing a panel like this because you don't know if you're talking to, you know, people who have been doing it a long time or if you're talking to newcomers. So hopefully, like Kathi said, you know, we'll talk about things that maybe new people can learn from, and maybe people who have been around don't mind being reminded, or maybe don't even mind disagreeing with some of the stuff we're saying. But it's just great to see the fact that you guys are interested, and I hope we can shed light on even one thing, let alone several.
Thank
So,
you.
I mean, I think the biggest thing, there's a lot of things that have changed, but I think one of the biggest things is that there's just more of us. I mean, I'm sure Katia, as a person who is running a department, unlike Lisa and I, who are the actual freelancers, I mean, there's just more of us. When I started freelancing, yeah, there were other freelancers. It wasn't just me, but there were way, way, way less of us. And so I think that's a big thing. There's more people that do it, which I think is good and bad. It's like, you know, if you have a Starbucks 2 doors down, you have a Coffee Bean, is that good or bad? I think there's both. But, you know, I think that's the biggest change. I think there's other changes within the industry itself that might trickle down to freelance. I think this is going to be something maybe that you guys bring up later, like in terms of what you're asked to do. I think you are more of a 360 type of person, whereas you might not have been when you first started freelancing, depending on what that was. So I think people like the Katis of the world are hiring you, expecting you to understand, you know, web and online and some digital, if not all digital. And I think maybe that's a change. Whereas I think before we were pigeonholed as like, oh, we can only do broadcast or we can only do this. So I think that's a change, but I think that's the evolution of the business in general.
Yeah.
But
That's really interesting. And excuse me for interrupting.
Yes.
It really, that goes to, as we announced this thing, we came up with the line, producing is hard, freelance is harder. But yeah, I think producing has gotten harder. And
Yeah.
as media has changed, you know, we this term, you know, there's a term integrated producer, whatever that means. And I've learned, you know, that means different things at different places. And yeah, and it's in my brain, in my little brain, it's really a different skill set. It doesn't mean it's not possible to know a lot of both, but you know, to be a broadcast producer or to just be focused on the video, I mean, that's a filmmaking mind. That's not like banner ads and things. And I think, you know, it's interesting that sometimes, you know, people are expected to do it all. Lisa, Kalb, Schaffer, get into this. So let's well, some of what you were talking about just now, Liz, well, it goes to marketing and, you know, like how you get work. But first, I just want to stay with some of the nuts and bolts stuff. Let's talk about rates. Now,
Sure.
you know, obviously there's no like going rate. There's a wide range, wider than ever. There
Right.
used to be like, right, like a sort of going rate for professional experience things. And now, but beyond the, you know, where rates are, and again, I don't even know if there's a way to speak to that. Talking about flat rates versus
Sure.
day rates versus how did hourly rates become a thing, and what's that about? And you know,
Certainly.
go for it.
So, I think that the most important thing is to know the job that you're about to take or that you're being interviewed for. There are so many different types of jobs. In the case that you would have an option to use the day rate versus a flat rate, and there are places that will give you that option. And then there are agencies that will tell you this is the way we work. And so I'll get to that in a second. But sometimes, it's like it's like being at a casino. Sometimes the house wins and sometimes the player wins. So I look at the job holistically and think about the amount of hours that I'm going to be putting in, the amount of days, how much travel time, etc., in a flat rate. And there are jobs that I can't absolutely tell how much post-production interaction and leadership will be needed by me. And so I take an average and then I throw that all together and come up with a flat rate. And then I look at my paperwork and say, okay, here's the worst case scenario. This could get ugly. I could lose in this equation. And then if I feel that way, I will say I would like to work on a day rate. So I actually prefer working on a day rate versus a flat rate when I don't know the people well. I don't know the team. I'm a little suspicious that it could really blow up to be a lot, a lot greater.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
How often do you find that your client, the agency or head of production, creative director, is interested or favors a flat rate? I mean,
Well, I'll tell you, I work for one agency that very much likes to know well in advance how much money they're going to be charging their client, so there are no surprises. With the flat rate, they have a number that they get approved because the client is paying for that person for that number. And therefore, they are not looking at overages, because when I do a flat rate, it starts day here and day there. It ends day there. So that's a part of the contract.
So excuse me. So flat rate, of course, is just like firm bid can never be like truly firm bid if the specs change, etc. In
Correct.
the same way, from your perspective, flat rate doesn't mean no matter what. There's a limit on the count. Okay,
No.
Liz and Kathi, you want to jump in just on this
Kathi,
subject for a second?
Kathi.
I'm sorry. I thought I know that.
Kathi.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with Lisa. I mean, if I can be brutally frank, I try not to do flat rates, period, the end. I mean, because more often than not, you do get screwed, and that's just the truth. But it depends, as Lisa said, it depends on my relationship with the agency. It depends on whether I worked there before. Also, I think you just, honestly, when I do flat rates, I figure out how many days I'm going to be there. And then I go, okay, here's my flat rate. Here's my days times my day rate, and here's my flat rate. No, that isn't to say that's going to work. The agency may say we can't afford that, in which case it's a decision. You say, okay, I get it. I like you guys. I want to work with you. Let's figure out a compromise. I mean, you've got to be negotiable. The flip side is you also have to know your worth. And I don't think that's specific to advertising or producing. I think that's any industry. You have to know your worth. So it's like, at what point am I going to say no to this because I just know it's not worth it? Versus, hey, I want to make some money. I don't want to be unemployed for 2 months. I like this place, or I think I'll like this place. So I want to be negotiable. And I think it's finding that middle ground. I had never done an hourly rate. And then I did a job for a PR agency, and they didn't even tell me it was an hourly rate. I negotiated with the head recruiter for a day rate, and I never thought anything about it. And then when the job was over, I billed, and they're like, Liz, what is this? I'm like, what is what? Like, these are my days and here's what I charge. They're like, but this is way over hourly. I'm like, what hourly? Like, I had no idea what they were doing.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
But
So,
I want to pick up on the hourly thing, because we actually do have somebody in-house at the moment who is billing hourly. Actually, I want to say there are also personal preferences here.
Yes.
So for her, this is how she wants to bill because she's got a whole lot of other stuff going on. She's not dedicated 100% to the thing that she's working on. And this gives her the flexibility to be able to bugger off and do whatever else she's got going on in her life. So, and it works for us because then we, you know, she's very dedicated to this very specific thing that she's on, and it works both ways. So there are such things as hourly rates. And I think just hearing Liz and Lisa talk here, I think really in the end, what works for you? Know your worth. What works for you? What is it that you need out of this thing? And yes, because I am on staff and I look at it slightly differently. Know what you need to walk away with so that you can cover your expenses. I mean, you absolutely don't want to walk away with a job where you're going to lose money. So that doesn't work. So, you know.
Right. I think
I mean, I was taken aback by the hourly thing initially because no one mentioned it, and I was like, wait, what? And then it ended up being fine. I mean, I did the math. I got paid what I was supposed to be paid, but it taught me that, to Kathy's point, every agency, and certainly some of the newer ones that, like, this is a PR agency that's not necessarily used to doing video or broadcast or anything. So for them, it was normal. Everybody there probably
right.
hourly. So it ended up being fine. But again, I think Kathy's right. It really just depends. I didn't really mind it in the long run because I got paid what I would have been paid, but it was a little bit uncomfortable there for a minute.
Yeah.
The hourly rate gets a little tricky when you're on location. And so I have to set some rules for myself. And I'm clear with my boss, whoever is in charge of the money, that I will work on the job, because when I go away on a shoot, I'm often away for 14 to 21 days. And those days are very long. There is an inclusion of a meal with the team, the clients, go out for drinks, have a little meeting after the tech scout.
You're working all the time.
I'm with them all the time. I'm working 24/7, basically. So the way that I structure this, because I am working on an hourly rate currently by the choice of the agency that I am working for. And so I've gotten used to and set some parameters that work. So in other words, I charge them the hourly rate that they've asked me to work within, like from portal to portal, from the minute I get into the van or the Uber until I come back to the hotel. But if I go out again for dinner, that I don't charge them for. One of the things that I have heard when agencies working on an hourly rate is that things do get back to me sometimes when there is an art director, for example, that's overcharging and charging for 18-hour days. It doesn't look good. People find out. This is not a big mystery. And overcharging on an hourly basis can get you to lose your job or not be asked back.
Of course. Question, speaking of distant location jobs, what about travel days? And what about, like, you know, a down day, right? Is that a thing? Is that exist? Who wants to speak to that?
So for me, I do charge for travel days, portal to portal. So when I get in the car to go to the airport and when I arrive at the hotel, stop. For down days, which I had on a job recently, we had a weather day, I charged them. But we had a shoot day in which I was sent home because I had COVID.
Right. Okay, thank you.
I charged them. It was a shoot day.
Got it. What about, and I'm going to address this to you, Kathi, although all of you, of course, could speak to this and everything else. Contracts, deal memos, is that a thing? And also cancellation and postponement, is that like just a good faith thing, or how does that work?
We absolutely have deal memos at Eric and Coleman. They get hammered out at the beginning of the job. Get all your information in there, get specific about down days, about travel days, hourly rates, all of that should
Interesting.
go in there. So you should really actually make sure that you are doing that. Yeah, it's pretty above board, actually. It's quite nice. It's nice to see that. And then it goes into our system, and you can either, depending on how you're set up, you can either go on as a 1099 or you can choose to go on as a W-2.
Ah,
So those
that's
are,
interesting.
yep, but those are your own tax choices that you're going to have to make.
Mhm.
Obviously, as a freelancer, we do not offer health insurance for the freelancers. However, if there are things that come up, and this is from my perspective here, and this was actually also the case at Mechanism, the timesheets come to me, and then I take a look at them. And on occasion, there'll be something where somebody has to go and do some personal thing. And they say, listen, I'm not going to bill for this, even though it's on my, it's part of my deal memo. This is a personal thing, and I'm going to be gone that day. And so, just be above board with what
So
you're doing.
interesting.
Or, hey, man, I need to do this extra day and I worked on the weekend. And I mean, we're small, so it's easy for me to have oversight over this stuff. I'm not at a big holding
Mhm.
company where I have no oversight. But so I'm very connected to the producers. I'm very connected to the deal memos and make sure that
Sure,
everything's
sure.
in there. Everybody gets a copy,
Now,
so.
now, to me, it's interesting what you said, that you give a choice of 1099 versus W-2.
Mhm.
Liz
Well, I mean, it's
Graves,
sort
do
of a
you find?
default W-2, unless
All
somebody
right,
wants to go
all right.
on a 1099.
Liz, is that your experience also, that you have a choice typically?
I wish we did. No, I mean, I have done both, as I'm sure most agency producers on this panel, I mean, not on the panel, the people listening in. I mean, I don't usually get a choice once I'm hired. I've worked for a lot of W-2 agencies and I've worked for a lot of 1099. I've never been in a situation where I've started an agency and like, hey, which one would you prefer? Because that would be great. That's the first time I'm hearing that. But
Me too.
I certainly have done both, and I think all of us know, having done our taxes over the years, like anything, just like freelance versus staff, there's pros and cons. I think there's pros and cons to W-10 versus 1099. I mean, I would for sure prefer 1099 because I'd rather just figure out what tiny little write-offs I have and be able to do it than for someone else to make that decision for me. The flip side is, you might have a chance in hell of getting money back around tax time. I don't know.
Right.
I never get any money.
Lisa, what's your experience lately?
So I feel that Kathi, your example is very unusual and it's very
Yeah.
refreshing.
Yeah.
But well, I have never been given a choice. It's either this or that. And currently I'm working for several years at sort of permalancing at an agency that is, I'm working on W-2 on an hourly rate. There is overtime that they offer. After X amount of days, they offered me health insurance. After X amount of time, they offered me a 401k that they contributed to. So I'm working for a very large company.
But
So
that's interesting, and everybody
yeah,
should. I mean, think about it. The whole idea of freelance and benefits, historically, is sort of like a disconnect. So I think it's cool. And I just want to add, and Lisa and I spoke about this. That's, I think, could be a New York state law that
Mhm.
requires it, and a thing that might vary from place to place. So I think
Yeah.
everybody just needs to pay attention to what their rights are where they're working.
I want to add one thing because this is so important, how we get paid. And if you find yourself in a circumstance where you have chosen to go on a day rate, or they tell you just to bill us day rate, and you are working X amount of hours above and beyond. I negotiated my second round at this agency. I got a new contract because the contract expired. They wanted to keep me on, so they were going to give me a contract for another 6 months. The amount of hours that I worked for that day rate was crazy. I mean, it was ridiculous. So I negotiated. I was right in the middle of the job and I asked for $250 more a day. And that's what I got. And they did a new contract based on that, and they understood. However, I do want to say that the creative director who I was working for 2 years later called me on a job and said, I'd like to bring you in, but I think you're too expensive. And I don't think we can do it. And
Right,
so
right.
I overpriced myself, but I asked to be rewarded for the work I was doing, but it stuck with him. So you do have to be careful.
Interesting. My final question about rates and that sort of thing. Talk about expenses for just a moment.
Mhm.
Uh, have you ever been in a situation where you were asked to pick up to front money for yourself, which I imagine the answer is yes, and you might even want to. Maybe I'll get points, rewards. But I've heard of a situation where a freelance producer was asked to put their credit card down for a bunch of hotel rooms, like for the agency. And again, I could imagine if there's good faith and you know you're going to be reimbursed and quickly, you might want to. But is that weird? Is that, Lisa, you're shaking your head in the negative?
When I go into a new agency, I tell them that I will pay for myself, but I will not pay for any other staff.
Yeah, this should all be part of the deal memo at absolutely 100%. And in fact,
Yep.
our staffers, including me, my credit card is available. First of all, we have travel services where it all gets billed to a central card that is a company card, especially if you're doing
Nice.
hotels. It's a bit different because the deals you get on hotels are best done when you're actually calling the hotel versus some travel service. But I have a central credit card for that too. So the choice is always there. You can, if you want to, use your own credit card for your hotel. However, the company card is there at your disposal, and all staff members who are traveling have their own cards and need to use those. So we have very, very specific travel rules, and those have to be kept,
Interesting.
I would say.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Kathi, speaking of your deal memo, I think there's a bunch of people here. I'm sort of hearing it says he chatted. There's a lot of interest in that. If you're willing to share it, or even a
Yeah, I
generic
mean,
form of it.
I would have to ask HR and see if they'd be willing to let me have it. I mean, if I can share it out, I'm happy to do that. I would think these things
Yeah.
are all specific to whatever agency you're working with.
Understood.
But my suggestion is, again, we're a small independently held shop. There's always room for improvement. There's always room for change. And so the deal memo is your opportunity to set your rates, set the way you want to work. And, to Lisa's
Great.
point, think about how you want to go in and be, you're a producer. You should know to put these things down on paper. If you're experienced, this.
Right, right. Brilliant, brilliant. All right, let's move on to questions about what we're calling scope. We got this question. I hope it makes sense. Who's my boss? Who to go to when you have a problem? I think, in a way, sometimes it's quite straightforward. Kathi, at your place, you're the boss, right? And over and out. Can it be in a smaller agency or the way a place is structured, or if you are hired by the creative director, can it be more complicated than that? Liz, do you have a thought on that?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, somebody hired you. I mean, you didn't just walk off the street and start producing. So somebody hired you. If it's the head of production, then yeah, that's your boss. If it's not the head of production, it could be an EP. If they don't have either of those, it could very rarely, but it could be someone from HR. It could be the CD. I've had CDs bring me in where there's no head of production, and
Right.
I basically feel like that is the boss at that point. I mean, we might be peers, but at the end of the day, I answer to that person. So I
Right.
think it really just depends on who's hired you and who brings you in. And I
Right.
don't think there should be an issue, because if you've agreed to work there, you've agreed to whatever it is that they've asked you to, and there should be some kind of open dialogue, like Katia said. Obviously, you have a contract or a deal memo in place, and then above and beyond that, there's some kind of agreement that you've made. And I mean, I think you go to that person and you discuss whatever the issues are. And if it's a creative director who potentially doesn't understand what the issues are as a producer, we've all been there, then you might call your friends that are producers, I mean, you bounce
Yeah.
ideas off of peers, or you talk to a freelance business manager. I have lots of business managers that I've called over the years that I call and I say, can you help me out? This is a question that I have. So I think as producers, you go where you think you have the answers to, but that's
Right,
different
right.
than who's your business.
Smart, right, right. So speaking of business managers, going back to the question of scope, I mean, my sense is that, okay, there are freelance producers who come from big agencies that have business departments.
Mhm.
There are other freelancers who don't have that background. There are so many smaller agencies who don't have business managers. I mean, has it changed? And as a freelance producer working for smaller places, do you have to know everything that a business manager knows and have those skills? And it has to do with a lot of talent stuff and other stuff. I mean,
Yeah,
Lisa, you want to speak to that, or Liz,
sure.
or anybody?
I
Kathi?
I'm currently working at an agency that's not that small, but it's a division of a very large international agency. So one of the biggest. We operate autonomously. There is no business manager, and I need to be the liaison with our paymaster for talent. I do all the talent paperwork myself, all the session reports, the completion reports. I do all the estimates, the budgets. Nobody checks them for me. There's no business manager to bounce anything off of. I'm the one who 100% deals with the cost consultant. All the things that I learned at small agencies growing up in the business, I went from small to medium to large to small. And during that time period, and then started to freelance a really long time ago, I had to know, and I would do what Liz is talking about, call your friend who's a business manager, call a producer if you've never done this thing before. So I had to do a lot of that in the growing phase, and it prepared me for where I'm at today. Because even if somebody wants to hire a business manager, I keep hearing there aren't any great ones available. There's so few. And I just feel like it's changed dramatically, and that thank God I was mostly prepared for it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that I'm going to pivot for a slight moment to the whole sort of marketing, getting work, etc.
Mhm.
Kathi, you were talking about in a call we all had before this about, the skills you need in a producer. And we actually got this question before today from a user, quote, how many years of agency producer experience would you recommend necessary before making a jump to freelance? Seems like only, common among senior level producers and EPs. Do mids have a chance at getting consistent work? I mean,
Mhm.
Kathi, can you speak to the skill
Yeah, I
set you
mean, these are
need?
all, it's a bit unfair because I'm coming at this from, I did not to age myself here, but I'm coming at this from, some many decades in the industry. And I started elsewhere. I started in live action, and then I went to post, and now I've been agency side for over, I don't know, 14 years now, 14 years. So it's obviously experience is key to any job you do. So the producer is no different, whether you're agency or live action producer. So in terms of the skill set, what skill set do you need to become freelance? I think any skill set is good. What do you lean towards? Live action? Do you lean towards super digital? Are you a print producer? I think you kind of need to decide that for yourself. So that comes with. And so you learn these things. You can either start obviously small at an agency, and then jump ship to be freelance, or you do what I did, which is I was a live action producer. I think it's actually the better way in, because you learn critical skills that starting at an agency as an agency producer, you do not have.
Mhm.
And so my recommendation is actually be open to learning everything, and
Yeah.
really jam whatever opportunity to learn onto your plate. across the board, and then decide what is your favorite thing to produce, because yes, there are many, many things, and yes, you can specialize a little bit, but there are many, many things and many paths you can take. The net is get that experience in and pack it in, and try to do that on an accelerated pace. And don't be shy to take extra classes if you can afford them, or hit up your friends, or show up for a shoot, or really try to pack it in, because the more experience you have, the more you can speak to what producing actually is and means, the better opportunity you'll have to either be on staff or freelance. I think what you need, and also build those relationships. Somebody had, in one of those questions that you sent through, was, is it a casting session to get that job? The answer is yes, actually it is. And just like Liz, and I'm going to shut up now. I want to bounce it to Liz, to Lisa. But what do you need? What are the requirements? Everything, absolutely everything that you can learn.
Right. It's endless. The issues that come up, it's endless.
Well, I mean, one of the things I think that, at least I can speak for me and maybe for Lisa and Kathi, is that I think one of the things that we love, assuming we still love doing the job, is that every project is different. Every agency is different. Every director is different. Every creative team is different. Every concept is different. And that's one of the plus sides of the business, right? You can't get bored. I don't care how experienced you are. I could have a tabletop shoot with a peach on a table and it could still be challenging.
Yeah.
So, it's like, there is no such thing as an easy job. All jobs are difficult. But that being said, Perry, I don't want to leave the panel or leave this question saying to junior producers, you don't have a chance.
Right.
You don't have a chance at freelancing, because I don't believe that. I think you have a chance at whatever you create an opportunity for yourself. We all started somewhere. We didn't all start understanding what a 12-hour day meant or what a DP does or whatever. I mean, there is some learning on the job. So I think, again, it's just this balance of, I like that every time I'm on a job, more than likely I'm going to learn something new. I'm going to be asked something that I probably have never been asked before, or that honestly I may not be able to answer, in which case I've got to sit down and really think about it, or go back to what I said earlier, call some colleagues or some peers, or et cetera, et cetera. So I don't want to discourage like juniors from freelancing, and I don't want to discourage juniors from getting a staff job. You've got to learn somehow. But I do agree with Kathi that I think the more you can glean, I love the idea of starting with live action. I mean, honestly, if I could have line produced, even though that job just floors me, I think that, and it does, and I think it's completely masochistic. I still think that it's an amazing skill set to have.
Right.
If I had that as an agency producer, there's no question in my mind, it would be an extra set of skills that would be used every day. But anyway, I think there's opportunities to learn. I think every job we learn something new, and whether you're a junior or a senior producer, I think it's what you get out of it is what you put into it.
Right.
I think in, just to circle back to everything that you were saying, Kathi, about soaking it all up and finding what you love and just take the opportunities. There are certain tricks and things that a young producer could do to try to prepare themselves to be more of a jack of all trades as a freelancer, so that they can go into that meeting and say, I've done this and I've done that, and things like this. Don't drop, if you're working for a big agency as a junior producer and you want to go freelance, or you want to be prepared, or you want to be a better producer, don't drop off your paperwork with the business manager. Sit with them and talk with them. When you're dealing with a casting director, don't let the casting director talk to the agents without you on the phone learning something, and on and on. Get in there. Just because we're so busy doesn't mean you still need to deal with it. So why not learn while you're dealing with it?
Smart. Yeah, really interesting.
Just
go ahead, please.
On that, which
please.
I think is, I have just a really great example of a young person who's at our agency who came I mean, really knowing very little out of some program, and the way that he has in the last 2 years that he's been, under my sort of guidance, I started him out on business affairs, because I felt like, hey, if you can understand just some basic labor laws, hourly rates, overtime, W-4s, I-9s, like how do we even navigate paperwork, and understand timelines of when you need to get these things in and paid and all, you're dealing with budgets, you're dealing with timelines, you're dealing with labor laws, you're dealing with legal, you're dealing with a lot of things that are actually the backbone of producing.
Yeah.
He is now 2 years in, he's now an associate producer. And I mean, this was like, he has looked under every single hood. And what makes him so special is he doesn't shy away from raising his hand and saying, I want that thing. I want to learn how to do that. I will take that. And so it's an approach thing, producer.
Yeah.
Got to
mean,
come at it with that special sauce.
What you're saying now goes to the value of being on staff, though, I will add. And even
Sure.
in my experience in line production, if you're a PA and you're just on the set, you have no context, really. If you were in the office, doing the prep, you understand why there's so much energy on this thing or that thing. So yeah, it's all interesting.
I have found myself in positions as a freelancer, walking into a place that really had no structure whatsoever. I have been hired by a creative director like you, Liz, and there's nobody around to talk to. There's no producer, head of production, business manager, traffic person. There might be a PM, but the PM doesn't know anything about broadcast or video. You've got to go in there. And what makes all of what we're saying more important for a person who wants to freelance is that it's easier to get those opportunities, when you're on staff, but take the opportunities so that you can go out there and kill on the interview and get that job in a little place. Also, I think that we've all worked direct. I mean, I don't know about you, Kathi, but Liz, we've worked direct to client. And I've done a good amount of that.
Is that different? How is that different?
It can be very different. It depends upon the client. I worked for beauty brands, direct to client. I worked in the financial sector, direct to client. That's where I really cut my teeth on doing videos, which is what everybody's doing now.
Right.
So it depends upon the client, but it is very different. It takes working for a financial institution in-house is not the same as a beauty brand, but the net is that you as the freelancer are going in as the jack of all trades. They're not going to have this department or that person to talk to.
Jack of all trades, master of all. Liz, did you want to say something?
Well, I mean, I think in terms of, are you still on the question of in-house versus an in-house client? I mean,
well, client versus working direct to client. Is there any fundamental differences?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are definitely differences. I mean, some direct to client does have sort of some infrastructure of an agency, even if they're direct to client. So again, even those vary. I've worked with a lot of direct to client that still has, they don't want to call themselves an agency, but in reality, they are. CAA being a great example. But they had an infrastructure. They just didn't call themselves that because they were CAA and didn't want to be seen as an ad agency within it. But I think it depends. And then of course you can work directly with a client, which is what Lisa said, where you literally are on your own. You're dealing with 10 people or 8 people who don't know anything at all about your job or about production or anything. And I don't have much to say about it other than I think you have to do what you always do and try to educate them along the way. And also maybe bring your own sense of infrastructure with you, because that's the other thing, is that I love the fact that, we all share the same title, right? We're all producers, or we're all executive producers, or we're all senior producers, or we're all integrated producers. But the truth is, it's so different. Every producer is so different based on personality, that's a big one, based on, technique, based on relationships, based on, like Lisa was saying, how you learn the job. Kathi learned as a line producer. So in that way, you're attacking the job differently anyway. But I think in terms of direct to client, it's like anything, as I said earlier, it's pros and cons. Do I like working with account people? It depends. If they're good, yes. If they're good, I like account people. And sometimes I want that buffer. Sometimes I don't want to talk to the client directly, and I want kind of that buffer, or I want some of the thinking that a good, smart account person brings to the project. The other side of it is sometimes you just don't want the layers. You don't want 15 people to tell you whether a mix sounds good or not. Like, it's kind of nice to get rid of the layers. And it's only like you and the creative person and maybe one other brand person. So, which personally I kind of like, but I just think it depends. I think that there's a lot of opportunities now for producers to work in-house. And so because of that, and I started off earlier by saying it's a more crowded market, I think every producer should go after that work. It exists. And I think with anything, like I said, there's pros and cons.
Sure.
I don't make up my mind of whether I'm going to do a job if it's in-house with a client versus
Of
an
course.
I mean, I look at all the other 12 variables that I'm going to look at. That might only be one of them.
Sure. Let me bounce around. I'm looking at some random sort of questions and stuff. So it'll be not exactly a lightning round, but some things that might not all be part of one thing. Request to do additional work while working on the project you were hired to do. So I'll give you a scenario. You're bidding a job, and or you're getting reels in, and it's moving along and all that, but you're not working all day every day. Your boss comes to you and say, "Hey, I have this other board. Would you mind? I don't know, how it's going to be handled, and we could talk about whether you might be available to produce it and whatever, and if it goes and on. But meanwhile, could you look at it? Could you give me some ideas about? Could you help me with a ballpark? Could you think about directors for it? Is that like a problem? Is that fine? Do you have an issue with that? And related, but not the same question. Somebody asked, how sometimes it seems to this particular person that it feels like a given job never ends, and clients expect to use your skills and knowledge as part of a previous or upcoming job, not being billed for it. Do we need to bill like attorneys, etc.? 15-minute day parts. I mean, how do you think about that? In terms, it's, I guess, part of scope.
So my answer is, if I'm being paid on an hourly, bring it on. If somebody tries to do that to me during a meeting where I don't have the job yet, and there's another thing that happens. They give you a board and want to know what you think and how much should it cost. And I'm like, this is not a meeting. This is work. So I'm fine with it if I'm working for an agency and I have a nice relationship with them. And, I was kidding when I said, if I'm being paid, if I'm being paid by the hour, it's more work, but I'm happy to help my partners, if these are people that I like, and
Sure.
A great
Makes
relationship.
sense. Liz, agree?
Yes.
It's funny. I'm really interested in Kathi's answer because as a person hiring, because I've been faced with this too, and I kind of have very mixed feelings about it. So I'm interested in a person and also some of the agency senior producers that I see on as the listening in, because I kind of just faced this recently. I mean, at the end of the day, I think you do judge by you know, how much do you respect this agency? How much do you like them? How much do you want to get more work from them? I mean, I think, Kathi, you said in one of our preliminary meetings, you know, you have to read the room. Like, I'm not going to speak to answer to your question about should we bill as lawyers for every 15 minutes. That I've never done. I'm not going to be like, okay, if you want me to, you know, do a ballpark, I'm going to charge you $100 for those 15 minutes. That I wouldn't do unless I was just never going to come back to this place, because I don't think that that's, you know, a good way
It's
of
not playing
doing-
nice.
Yeah, I don't think that that's a good way of doing business. The flip side is we know there's pros and cons to producing staff versus freelance, right? And to me, one of the pros are that very often you're only on one job, because one job is a
Mhm.
lot of work. It's not like you're goofing off while you're bidding, or you're goofing off while the editor's putting the footage together. Some days are shorter than others. So one of the advantages, I think, to freelancing is that you're not on 4 or 5 jobs at a time the way staff people are most of the time, not all of the
Smart.
time. So I do think that there is a balancing act. It's like, if all of a sudden I'm being asked to do a full-on second job, I might sit there. Again, it has to do with the relationship you have with the head of production. If I'm working for Kathi, I'm like, Kathi, what do you think is fair in this situation? Like,
Okay.
it's going to be a lot more work for me. I'm not expecting you to double my day rate, but what do you think of this? Like, do you really think I should be paid the same?
Smart.
So to me, it's an open dialogue, even though I have a point of view going in on what I'm going to
Smart.
say and what I'm going to ask for. But Kathi, I am interested in what you have to say when you've been faced with that.
I mean, I think really in the end, you know, we hire people, freelancers, based on, first of all, how do they get along with the team? And so if they get along with the team and they come back, then first of all, as a freelance producer, you do have the opportunity when you are structuring your deal memo to ask about additional work. And I would highly recommend you do that. However, and you should also ask who your boss is, because then you know who you're going to be talking to. So at our shop, yes, we do request that freelancers pick up a thing here or there. But if you had me as a boss, then I would be the one looking at everybody's bandwidth, and I would take a look and see, hey, Liz is on a massive 10-day shoot, and there is absolutely no way, because I know what a 10-day shoot looks like, and that peach might be 7 million peaches, and there might be an elephant and a truck and fireworks, and then I'll be like, hey, Liz will absolutely not be able to take anything. However, Liz is on a tabletop shoot that shoots in 3 weeks, and it is 1 peach, and she probably will be able to take on this radio thing that I've got for her. So it actually, if you've got a reasonably smart boss who's asking you to look at something, then that reasonably smart boss probably knows what the job, how much time you're already putting towards something, and whether or not it is a ridiculous ask or whether it is something that that person can actually take on. So we have a lovely arrangement where I try my biggest goal at the agency. And this, we have quite a few, I mean, we're small. So when I say we have quite a few freelancers, we do actually hire freelancers. But the goal is never to burn people out to such a degree that they are, you know, literally up all night. So my job is to make sure that there is balance. Now, there's not always balance, okay? So sometimes it's just like hell on wheels, like it is at the moment for me. But normally speaking, yes, you would ask the freelancer to take on a small thing here or there if they can. If they can't, then speak, and then it's okay. Then you have a conversation about it.
Right, but
Right.
everybody should have a boss like you, Kathi, and we don't always. So just an example of that, where I got stuck in a situation sort of in the middle of the pandemic, and I was brought in. I didn't negotiate how many projects, and I, being a martyr as some producers can be, I was up to 7 jobs. I lasted 6 weeks. On my 3rd week, I gave notice. And
Yeah,
that's crazy.
they begged me to stay because of this happening with this person and this personal thing. And I'm like, I'll give you a couple more weeks, but that's it.
that's crazy. Guys, just a note, we have just 4 minutes left, and we like to, stay
Oh,
on
no.
time for everybody's benefit. I want to say, I want to introduce a question that is a whole session. So we're not even gonna get to it. But I just when it came in late to us, and we find it, and I find it so freaking interesting, and in a way, so this will be a teaser for our next season's show, if we have it or not. Somebody asked the question. I'm gonna give him credit for it. Damon Webster, who might be here, a longtime freelance producer, also was on staff. It's like, what are the best ways for a producer to be a creative member of a team as opposed to a production manager? And before you answer, again, I literally think we don't have time to even start answering. But I just want to say, in my mind, and I was talking to Jonathan about this earlier, this goes back to like, you want to put this in historical context almost to
Jimmy
even think
Siegel,
about this.
BBDO, 20 years ago.
Well, gray advertising 40 years ago, this is what I learned from the elders. Producers did the whole job, period, basically. Writers came to the set, but the art directors didn't. So there's that. And I remember when I was growing up and started representing, I learned that there were certain agencies that, like Ogilvy and Y&R, where producers were really, and it even has to do probably with an organizational chart and where you sit. Are you part of is the culture of the place where you're part of the creative department? And others have said, well, it's entirely about the team, whether you get to be. And of course, it has to do with earning it. And again, I think what Jonathan said when we were talking about it, it's he just got excited, I could tell, and it's his favorite question. So that's something to think about.
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of said it, Perry. I think it's about earning it, and I really do. I think it's about earning it. I mean, and it works both ways. I mean, a creative director or whoever has to earn your trust. Both people have to learn to earn each other's trust. And I think that, if you have good taste, which I don't know how you cultivate that, but whatever you do,
right.
I think you do earn it. But I also think this, by the same token, there's just creative people. It's like when you work with a feature director doing a commercial, you know how they don't understand like what a pre-pro is, or they don't understand like what a producer does. I think it can be very similar to an agency. You can just have a creative director that at the end of the day doesn't feel that way about a producer.
Right.
Doesn't have that respect. And you have to decide if that's okay with you. If you're okay with it and you can do all the other jobs, like make
100%.
restaurant reservations or whatever.
Yeah,
It's like,
right.
then if
Right.
you're okay with the other duties that the creative director thinks you should do, then you're fine. If you think you should be having a creative opinion and you don't get that, then don't work with that team again. I think it's like you earn it, and you hopefully people will see you as a member and you can bring something to the party.
Yeah.
But
Well,
if they don't feel that way, they don't
listen.
feel that way. And
Yeah,
you would
exactly.
decide if you're okay with it.
Perry,
Hey,
excuse
you
me.
three, no, we're done. We're out of time.
Oh, come on,
You-
Lisa.
All right, you
All right,
three
one thing.
have earned it. And that's why you're here today. And we are so indebted to you. And everybody, we did record this. Michael, I think you were a little slow to get started, even though we talked about it 6 times. It's fine. But we're gonna have it. We're gonna have this posted like tomorrow-ish. And Lisa, if you must say something else.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
One
Go ahead,
of the most
Lisa.
one of the most important things I feel as a responsibility as a well-rounded producer is to be involved in culture, the arts,
Definitely.
listen to current music,
Yeah.
even if it's not the music that you like, try to stay on top of it. Read freaking People magazine. I have been asked for talent lists of people who are very big in pop culture. Go to the ballet, go to the movies.
Yeah. Hey, Jay Walter, what's his name?
Great.
Patterson would, before he became an author, as those of us elders know, was creative director at J. Will Thompson. He used to circulate, it was probably a cassette tape, right? In those days, of like the top 40 pop songs for people to listen to. So yeah,
It's
right.
important. All of
That's
this is
huge.
important. And I'm sort of circling back to the fact that if you have like a good creative team that is interested in you and you talk about, you throw some of that knowledge on them.
Yep.
You know what's going on out there in the world.
Right.
And it doesn't really matter how old you are. If you
Yep.
stay on top of these things, I
Yep.
could be with a 25-year-old producer who doesn't know shit about popular culture.
I
Hey,
gotta say,
excuse me.
Perry,
Yeah.
I gotta say,
Go ahead. Go,
Perry, I
please.
gotta say one quick thing just on that. That literally just happened to me recently, Lisa, where we were doing a Zoom and the art director is a baby and he's so sweet and he's the loveliest guy. And he goes, Liz, you know some of the weirdest things about so much stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
he couldn't believe, and it's just, I mean, my brain is interested in that stuff. And I
Sure.
think most producers really are.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
He didn't understand why I kind of was spouting off all this stuff, but it's not like, I just think you're interested and that's what draws you to the job. And then you sort of, like you said, you then work to enhance that.
You're enriching
Yes,
yourself and you can throw that off to your creative team or not.
right, exactly. They'll either
Wonderful.
appreciate it or they won't.
Yeah.
Perry, I feel really bad that we didn't get to a lot of questions in the chat.
I
No.
know.
We got to plenty. We got no. I couldn't even
Okay.
look at the chat.
No,
But
there's
again,
a ton
we
of
can only
questions.
do so much. I hope you had a good time. I had a good time.
did,
I
yeah.
hope. I'm sure our our group here got plenty out of this. Kathi, I feel sorry for your inbox.
Kathi.
I
Kathi.
said Kathi. I'm saying Kathi. Your inbox is going to be out of control with
Yeah.
all these
Thank you.
people who
I'll
say
take this offline.
it's going to be like, Kathi, I heard every word you said, and I know I am so right for you in your place. So
Change your email address tomorrow.
exactly. Thanks,
No.
everybody.
No, we
We're
want to
outta
Bye,
here.
encourage
Liz.
people.
Love you.
Encourage
Kathi,
people.
you're
Encourage guys.
Good job.
fabulous.
Thank you for
Thank
such a
you.
great opportunity.
Thank
Harry,
you.
you're all
Really
right.
grateful.